The silence of the void was a lie. Sergeant Eva Rostova knew this better than anyone. Out here, between the cold disinterest of sleeping stars, silence was just the canvas upon which terror painted its masterpieces. Her silence was different. It was engineered, a product of the null cortex implant nestled at the base of her skull that scrubbed her biometrics clean from any scanner, and the whisper gel soles of her boots that drank the sound of her steps. She and the other 3 members of Fireteam Ghost were specters haunting the gilded halls of the Spire of Xylos, a trading hub so opulent it bled light into the surrounding darkness. Their target was a Xylosian diplomat named Prelate Vorn, a creature of soft robes and softer words who, according to Earth's hidden intelligence, had personally sanctioned the falsification of the final flight recorder logs of the starship Hope's End. 50 years ago, the Hope's End, humanity's first and only generation ship, had vanished in the supposedly empty Tartarus Nebula. It carried 250,000 souls, the best of Earth's dreamers and builders, on a one-way journey to carve out a new future. The Galactic Concordat, the bloated, self-important governing body of the known systems, had offered its condolences after a cursory investigation concluded the ship's experimental void drive had suffered a catastrophic malfunction. A tragedy, they called it. An unfortunate accident. Earth called it a lie. For 50 years, humanity had played its part, a grieving backwater species, quietly accepting the Concordat's narrative while its secret shipyards, hidden in the Kuiper Belt's icy chaos, forged a single, perfect instrument of retribution, the UNS Vengeance. It was a blade of a ship, all sharp angles and sensor-absorbent plating, and Ghost was its bleeding edge. Eva flowed through the service corridors, the polished chrome walls reflecting a distorted, elongated version of her onyx-colored combat skin. Her movements were liquid, economical, the result of 2 decades of brutal training and biological augmentation that had whittled away the woman she might have been, leaving only the weapon. She felt the familiar thrum of the combat suite integrated into her spine, a low-level vibration that was more a part of her now than her own heartbeat. Ahead, Jax, the team's breacher, raised a single, gloved hand. He was a mountain of muscle and ceramic plating, his helmet's visor a slit of impassive red light. Through the team's encrypted neural link, his voice was a gravelly whisper in her mind. Thermal blooms ahead, 2 guards, standard energy sidearms. Complacent. Eva didn't need to respond. She drew the monofilament blade from its magnetic sheath on her thigh, the weapon humming silently as its edge sharpened to a single molecule. On the other side of the wall, 2 Xylosian sentries were sharing a joke, their laughter a soft, chitinous clicking. They never heard her. One moment they were alive, secure in the power of the Concordat, and the next, a black phantom had slipped from the shadows between them, and their world dissolved into a brief, searing line of pain before fading to black. Eva slid the blade back into its sheath without a flicker of emotion, the act as reflexive as breathing. This was not war. It was extermination, a methodical pest control operation on a galactic scale. The mission was not to win a battle, but to unearth a truth buried for half a century under layers of political convenience. They reached the prelate's private spire, a monument of crystal and light suspended at the very apex of the station. The view was breathtaking, a swirling nebula of golds and purples painting the cosmos outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Prelate Vorn stood with his back to them, his slender, multi-jointed frame silhouetted against the stellar vista. He was admiring the view, a glass of shimmering, amber liquid held delicately in one of his 3-fingered hands. "Magnificent, isn't it?" he said, his voice smooth and unconcerned, echoing slightly in the vast chamber. The universe's capacity for beauty is matched only by its capacity for cruelty. He turned slowly, his large, liquid black eyes showing no surprise, no fear, only a kind of weary amusement. I must confess, I expected you sooner. The United Nations of Earth. I presume you always were a sentimental species. Jax and the others fanned out, their weapons trained on the diplomat, but Eva held up a hand, halting them. Something was wrong. The prelate was too calm, too accepting. This wasn't a cornered bureaucrat. It was a man waiting for an appointment. You signed the order. Eva's voice was a dead-flat monotone, filtered through her helmet's external speaker. You buried the truth about Hope's End. Vorn took a slow sip from his glass. Truth. He chuckled, a sound like chimes in a light breeze. My dear, primitive child, you came all this way for truth. There is no truth, only narrative. And the narrative of a stable, peaceful galaxy was far more valuable than the fate of one ship from an overreaching, infant species. His gaze was pitying, and it stoked the cold fire in Eva's gut. This was the arrogance of the Concordat, the casual dismissal that had allowed them to erase 250,000 human lives as if they were a clerical error. The Hope's End was not an accident, Eva stated, stepping forward. It was an execution. Who gave the order? The prelate's smile widened. Order, you still think in such linear terms. There was no order. There was a course correction, a balancing of the scales. Your species was expanding too fast, too greedily. You were becoming a potential contagion, a variable in an equation that had been meticulously crafted over millennia. The Hope's End was a message, not to you, but to those who understand the necessity of the great balance. He spoke of a force Eva had never heard of, a power beyond the Concordat. He called them the Architects. He spoke of them not as an enemy, but as unseen, dispassionate gardeners, pruning the galaxy to ensure its continued survival. You can't stop them, Vorn said, setting his glass down. You can't even comprehend them. Killing me will give you a moment of satisfaction, a flicker of vengeance, but it will change nothing. You are a ghost fighting a shadow. We're not here to fight shadows, Eva said, her voice dropping even lower. We're here to drag them into the light. She raised her sidearm, a sleek, silenced pistol that fired hypersonic flechettes. But before she could pull the trigger, Vorn held up a hand, a strange device strapped to his wrist glowing with a soft, ethereal light. Ah, but that is where you are mistaken, he said, his body beginning to shimmer. The light is not your ally, and the truth you seek is not a secret to be found. It is a predator. And you just rang the dinner bell. His form began to dissolve, not violently, but with a strange, serene grace, breaking apart into 1,000,000 motes of golden light that swirled and then shot upwards, phasing through the crystal ceiling. His final, disembodied laugh echoed in their neural comms, a chilling, synthetic sound that bypassed their filters. Find the echo chamber, it whispered directly into their minds, and see what's been waiting for you all this time. Alarms blared to life, the entire spire bathed in crimson light. The serene beauty of the nebula outside was blotted out by descending Concordat enforcement skiffs. Also, heavy, synthetic footfalls began to thunder up the stairwells. He played us, Jax growled. The entire station is a kill box. Eva's mind raced. An echo chamber, not a place. A piece of data, a network. There was no time. Exfil now, she commanded, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. Rendezvous at Point Omega. No surrender. No prisoners. The fight out of the spire was not a battle. It was a butchering. The Concordat's synthetic enforcers were fast and heavily armed, but they were predictable, programmed. They fought with logic. Fireteam Ghost fought with a cold, honed rage 50 years in the making. They moved through the enforcers like a scalpel through flesh, a whirlwind of black armor, plasma blasts, and shimmering monofilament edges. They were unstoppable, inhuman, a force of pure vengeance. But the Concordat had numbers. On the primary docking bay, as they fought their way toward their hidden stealth runner, a plasma bolt caught Kai, their tech specialist, high in the chest, vaporizing half his torso. He was dead before his body hit the deck. They didn't have time to mourn, no time to even grab his tags. They could only push forward, the loss a fresh wound in the phantom limb of their fire team. Back aboard the UNS Vengeance, cloaked in the shadow of a gas giant, the debriefing was cold and efficient. The ship's AI, a disembodied intelligence known only as Oracle, analyzed the fragmented data they had recovered from the prelate's spire before he dissolved. Oracle's voice was calm, clinical, devoid of empathy. The term echo chamber corresponds to a single, heavily encrypted data repository hidden within the Concordat's deep net. Its location is shielded by quantum entangled servers. We cannot breach it from here. Yet, in the ship's sterile briefing room, a single holographic figure flickered into existence. He was a man in a simple, gray uniform, his face perpetually obscured by shifting static. He was the voice on the other end of the line, the architect of their mission. He was Control. "Acceptable losses, Sergeant," Control said, his synthesized voice showing no reaction to the news of Kai's death. "Prelate Vorn confirmed our hypothesis. The Concordat is a puppet, and we must find the puppeteer. The architects." "He mentioned a great balance," Eva reported, her own voice hollow. "He made it sound like genocide was a form of galactic maintenance." "Ideology is irrelevant," Control dismissed. "We require a key to access this echo chamber. Prelate Vorn was a dead end. Our next target is a former Concordat cryptographer, a being known as the Curator. He defected years ago and now resides in the rust wells of planet Korvath." Eva looked at the star chart projected on the wall. Korvath was a toxic wasteland, a penal colony and scrapyard at the edge of civilized space. Another descent into another hell. She looked down at her hands, the black gloves of her combat skin covering the cybernetic filaments woven into her flesh. She felt the ghost of Kai's presence in the neural net, a sudden, sharp void where his signal used to be. The promise of vengeance had been a fire that kept her going through the years of cryo-sleep and brutal conditioning. But now, it felt like she was just trading one darkness for another, on a mission that grew more complex and monstrous with every secret they uncovered. Control's static-laced face turned to her. "Your new objective is clear, Sergeant. Find the Curator. Acquire his key. The human race is counting on you." The hologram vanished, leaving Eva alone in the silence with Oracle and the ghosts of her fire team. She closed her eyes, but all she could see was Prelate Vorn dissolving into light, his laughter echoing in her mind. The truth was a predator, he had said. Eva opened her eyes, her expression hardening into something colder than the void outside. "Then we'll just have to learn how to hunt bigger prey." Korvath was a festering wound in the hide of the galaxy, a planet that had been bled dry of its resources and left to choke on its own industrial exhaust. From the viewport of the stealth runner, as it sliced through the upper atmosphere of perpetual, rust-colored twilight, Eva could see the rust wells, a sprawling, vertical cancer of interconnected scrap heaps and derelict starships, piled so high they clawed at the toxic clouds. It was a city built from the dead, a graveyard that refused to lie down. This was where the Concordat sent its refuse, the criminals, the dissidents, the forgotten, and it was where a man terrified of being found would choose to bury himself. The landing was rough, a controlled crash into a chasm of twisted metal that their short-range scans had marked as momentarily empty. The moment the ramp lowered, the planet assaulted them. The air was a chemical cocktail that tasted of ozone and decay, so thick it felt like breathing sandpaper. A constant, low groan echoed through the metal canyons, the sound of 1 billion tons of stressed metal slowly surrendering to gravity. Jax grunted as he stepped onto the corroded deck plating, his heavy boots making a dull thud. "Smells like home," he quipped, his voice a low rumble in Eva's neural calm. Lena, the third and final member of Ghost, moved past them, her frame leaner, more agile. She was their scout, their eyes, her helmet's enhanced optical suite already painting the surrounding darkness with threat assessment overlays, multiple heat signatures, non-hostile, mostly scavengers in their nests. But the power conduits, they're active and shielded. Someone down here has resources. Her words were precise, clipped, a stream of pure data. Kai's absence was a palpable void. He would have already been inside the local networks, mapping their path. But now they were running blind, relying on Lena's eyes and Eva's instinct. "We move," Eva commanded, her voice a whisper against the groaning of the scrap city. "The curator is here." Oracle's data ghost pinpointed his energy signature to the lower levels. Sector Gamma 7. He calls himself the Archivist. Their descent into the rust wells was a journey into a mechanical intestine. They navigated narrow, precarious catwalks slick with industrial slime, their whisper gel boots finding purchase where there should have been none. The inhabitants of this vertical slum were a wretched collection of species, their bodies gaunt, their eyes filled with a desperate, hungry light. They watch Fireteam Ghost pass, black specters armed with weapons beyond their comprehension, or they kept their distance, or she was a universal currency, and Ghost was impossibly rich. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The walls were no longer just scrap. They were a collage of dead technology. Panels from Xylosian luxury cruisers were welded next to the blast-scarred hull of a Cathar dreadnought. Wires like metallic veins snaked everywhere, some sparking feebly, others pulsing with stolen power. And everywhere, there were screens. Thousands of them, salvaged from cockpits and data terminals, flickered with static, corrupted data streams, or the dead eyes of forgotten AI. It was a digital ghost town, and it was beginning to feel less like a hiding place and more like a shrine. They found the entrance to Sector Gamma 7 behind a waterfall of leaking coolant. A heavy blast door, salvaged from a military frigate, blocked the way, its locking mechanism surprisingly advanced. Lena knelt, her slender fingers producing a set of micro-tools. This is Concordat-grade encryption, military spec. Without Kai's decoders, this will take time. "We don't have time," Jax growled, stepping forward and placing a shaped charge on the door's magnetic hinge. "I have a faster key." Eva nodded her assent. The explosion was a dull, contained thump, and the meter-thick door groaned inwards. Inside, the air was different, filtered, clean. The chamber was vast, a hollowed-out engine room of a colossal freighter. The walls were lined not with scrap, but with servers, humming with a quiet, controlled power. Hollow projectors cast shimmering fields of data into the air, complex equations and stellar cartography swirling like captured nebulae. And at the center of it all, suspended in a harness of cables and interface jacks, was a being that was more machine than flesh. The curator was a frail, avian creature, his species long since integrated into the Concordat's bureaucratic machine. His feathers were sparse and gray. His body atrophied, but his mind was clearly elsewhere, plugged directly into the river of data flowing around him. Wires snaked from his skull and spine into the central server. His eyes, magnified by a set of optical implants, darting back and forth, reading code that was invisible to them. He didn't seem to notice their entry until Jax's heavy footstep echoed on the deck. The curator flinched, his head snapping towards them. His voice was a panicked squawk, amplified by a small vox emitter on his chest. "No, you can't be here. They'll see you. They see everything," he thrashed in his harness, trying to disconnect himself. Eva moved forward, her steps slow, deliberate. "We're not them, Curator. We're from Earth." The curator froze, his frantic energy replaced by a sudden, chilling stillness. He stared at her, his magnified eyes wide with a terror that went beyond simple fear of intruders. "Earth hopes end you. You're the ghosts, the ones who survived the culling. We're the ones who remember." Eva corrected him, her voice cold steel. "We need the key to the echo chamber." The curator let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Key? You think it's a door? You fools, it's not a library. It's a cage. And you want me to help you walk into it." He gestured wildly with a thin, three-jointed arm at the data swirling around him. "This is what I do. I watch the echoes. I am the archivist of the damned. I see the ghosts of 1,000 civilizations the architects have, balanced." He spat the word like poison. "They don't just destroy. You see, that would be inefficient. They record. They create a perfect digital facsimile of a species' entire existence. Their art, their science, their memories, their consciousness, and they store it. The echo chamber is their trophy room." The revelation settled in the cold air of the room, a weight heavier than any blast door. They weren't just fighting for vengeance against an act of genocide. They were up against a force that collected civilizations like insects in a jar. "Why?" Jax asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "To preserve them." "Preserve," the curator shrieked. "No, to study them, to learn from their mistakes, their aggressions, their ambitions. The architects are not conquerors. They are scholars, pathologists. They study galactic life to prevent any single species from developing into a contagion that could threaten cosmic stability. Your hope's end was flagged as a potential pandemic, a species so driven, so willing to sacrifice for its future, you were deemed too dangerous to exist." He sagged in his harness, the fight going out of him. "I was one of their cryptographers. I helped design the soul traps, as the consciousness recorders they used. I saw what they did to the Lyravel, the sentience of the Glass Nebula. I saw them get bottled, and I ran. I stole the only thing that could ever threaten them, the one thing they fear. The key." Eva pressed, her patience wearing thin. The curator shook his head as well I might say it. A single bitter tear rolling from one of his augmented eyes. "It's not a key. It's a virus. A weapon. An anomaly they couldn't account for. The echo of a species so ancient, so powerful, that not even the architects could fully cage it. They trapped its consciousness, but a fragment of its code remains feral, dormant. I shielded it, hid it inside my own neural network. It's woven into my very mind. He pointed a trembling talon at his own temple. The key is me, and if I give it to you, the moment I unlock the protocols to extract it, they will know. Their attention will fall upon this place like a star collapsing. As if on cue, a new sound pierced the hum of the servers. It was a high-frequency tone, almost beyond the range of human hearing, that made the fillings in Eva's teeth ache. The data streams around them began to flicker and corrupt. Red alert icons, ancient and alien, bloomed across the curator's screens. Unidentified energy signatures inbound. Lena's voice was tense in their comms. Fast, phasing in and out of local space. They're not using drive technology, boy. They're just appearing. They're here, the curator whispered, his body trembling uncontrollably. The hounds. The far wall of the engine room shimmered, then dissolved. Not with an explosion, but as if reality itself was being peeled back. 3 figures stepped through the opening. They were not solid. They were constructs of fractured light and shadow, their forms vaguely canine but shifting, unstable, like a glitch in the universe. They had no faces, only a blinding, cold white light where a head should be. They moved with an unnatural speed, their feet not touching the ground, and as they advanced, the very air around them seemed to decay, metal rusting and electronics shorting out in their wake. They were the predators Vorn had spoken of. "Get the code," Eva yelled, opening fire. Her flechette pistol spat rounds that tore through the air, but they passed through the hounds as if they were smoke, impacting harmlessly on the far wall. Jax let out a roar and fired his plasma carbine, the bolt of superheated energy engulfing one of the creatures. It shrieked, a sound of tearing data and static, and in its form flickered violently. But it did not fall. It reformed, its light burning even brighter, colder. Lena fired from the doorway, her sniper rifle's high-energy round hitting a second hound dead center. The creature dissolved into 1,000 shards of light, but a moment later, the shards reconverged. The hound whole once more. They were fighting concepts, not creatures. While Jax and Lena laid down suppressing fire that barely seemed to inconvenience their attackers, Eva vaulted over a console and grabbed the curator's harness. "Get it out now!" she screamed over the rising cacophony. "There's no time for a clean extraction." The curator panicked, fumbling with a terminal. "It could corrupt you. It could destroy your mind." "My mind is a weapon," Eva snarled, pressing the barrel of her pistol to his head. "And it belongs to Earth. Do it." With a final, desperate squawk, the curator slammed his hand onto the terminal. A thick data spike shot from the console and plunged into the neural port at the base of Eva's skull. The world dissolved. It wasn't pain. It was everything. 1 billion years of history. The rise and fall of empires whose names were dust. The thoughts of beings who swam in seas of methane and breathed radiation. It was a torrent of alien consciousness, a tidal wave of pure, unfiltered data. She felt her own identity, her own memories, the face of her mother, the cold steel of her first rifle, Kai's final, silent scream being stripped away, eroded by the sheer scale of the information. But in the heart of the storm, she felt it, the anomaly, the feral code. It wasn't a string of data, it was a thought, a single, primal concept. Defy. It latched onto her, coiling around her consciousness, not destroying it, but shielding it. She ripped the data spike from her skull, a scream tearing from her throat, a sound of agony and rebirth. She stumbled back, her vision flickering between the real world and a sea of screaming code. The hounds had dispatched Jax, his massive form lying motionless, his armor sparking, and were advancing on Lena. Eva raised her pistol, but her hand was shaking. The feral code inside her was fighting for control, a savage intelligence that saw the hounds not as a threat, but as an affront. Through her own eyes, she saw another set of memories, not her own. She saw stars being born. She saw galaxies being shaped by thought alone. And she saw the architects, not as gods, but as children, frightened children, building walls to keep the dark out. She felt a surge of power, a cold, ancient fury that was not her own. The code inside her stabilized, integrated. "We are the key," a voice whispered in the depths of her soul, a voice that was both her and something infinitely older. She looked at the hounds, and for the first time, she truly saw them for what they were: dogs on a leash, guard programs. She raised her hand, and a string of corrupted but impossible code projected from her fingertips, striking the nearest hound. The creature didn't just dissolve this time, it shattered like glass, and the light within it was extinguished forever. The remaining two hounds froze, their blank faces tilting as if they were processing this new, impossible variable. Then, with a flicker, they vanished, retreating from a threat their protocols could not comprehend. Eva collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily, the echo of that ancient power receding, leaving her exhausted but whole, changed. Lena rushed to her side, helping her up, while the curator stared, his beak agape in awe and terror. What have I done?" he stammered. Eva pushed herself to her feet, her gaze distant, haunted. She walked over to Jax's body and knelt, placing a hand on his cold, unresponsive helmet, another ghost to carry. She looked back at the portal the hounds had created, which was now sealing itself, leaving nothing but a scar on reality. "You didn't do anything," she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum, resonating with a power that hadn't been there before. "You just gave the ghosts a weapon." They were no longer just hunting for the truth. They had become the predator, and the entire galaxy was now their hunting ground. The UNS Vengeance sliced through the void, a sliver of obsidian against the tapestry of distant, indifferent stars. But inside, the silence was not one of stealth. It was one of mourning and transformation. Jax's empty seat in the mess hall was a black hole that drew the eye, a constant, grim reminder of the price of their mission. Lena had retreated into herself, her usual stream of tactical data replaced by a brittle quiet. She spent her time in the armory, methodically stripping and cleaning her rifle, the repetitive motions a shield against the grief. But Eva's change was the most profound. She was a ghost haunted by a god. The feral code, the echo of the defiant, ancient species the curator had unleashed into her mind, was not a passive passenger. It was a constant presence, a whisper in the back of her consciousness, a lens through which she now saw the universe. She saw energy not as light, but as data. She saw the laws of physics not as rules, but as suggestions, lines of code that could be bent, if not broken. She could feel the ship's systems, the hum of the life support, the thrum of the singularity drive, not as mechanical functions, but as an extension of her own nervous system. The line between Eva Rostova, soldier of Earth, and the ancient, nameless power coiled around her soul was blurring. Oracle, the ship's AI, was the first to quantify the change. Sergeant Rostova. Its calm, emphasized voice announced in the otherwise silent bridge. Your neural implant is exhibiting anomalous energy fluctuations. The quantum processing core is operating at 1/700% of its designated capacity. It is rewriting itself. Eva stood before the main viewport, her reflection a pale ghost against the starfield. I can feel it. Oracle, she said, her voice softer than before, yet carrying a new resonance. It's learning me, and I'm learning it. She had spent days in a meditative trance, not sleeping, not eating, just communing with the entity within her. It had no name, no form, only a single, driving imperative that now echoed in her own heart. That which cages must be broken. The architects, with their great balance and their echo chamber, were the ultimate jailers. The virus the curator gave us is more than a key, she continued, turning from the viewport. Lena had entered the bridge behind her, a shadow in the low light. It's a map and a weapon. The echo chamber isn't in a fixed location. It's a mobile data haven, a pocket dimension shielded by reality warping technology to what it has to anchor itself. It has nodes, relay points disguised as mundane structures all across concordate space. We destroy the nodes. We weaken the cage. Lena stepped forward, her face grim. We're a fire team of 2. Eva, we just went up against 3 of those hounds. We barely survived. Attacking these nodes will bring more. They will, Eva agreed, her gaze unwavering. But they bleed. I made one bleed. The code inside me. It understands them. It sees their source code. They're not gods, Lena. They're just very old programs. She projected a star chart from her own neural implant onto the main screen, a feat that should have been impossible. The chart was overlaid with shimmering, complex lines of code that only she could see. 3 points glowed with a malevolent, crimson light. 3 primary nodes, niches disguised as a communications relay in the Xylo system, not far from the spire. Another is a power conduit buried in the core of a gas giant in the Centauri belt. And the third, she zoomed in on a location deep within the Concordat's administrative heart, a system so heavily fortified it was considered impregnable. The third is integrated into the central archive on the planet Kronos, the memory of the galaxy, a comms relay, a power station, and a library. Lena deadpanned. And I'm guessing they're not guarded by librarians. They'll be guarded by the Concordate's best, Eva confirmed. And when their forces fail, the architects will send their hounds. But they won't be expecting us. They think we're still just ghosts, fighting for vengeance. They don't know that we've become an infection in their system. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They would strike the nodes in quick succession, a series of lightning raids designed to sow chaos and cripple the echo chamber's defenses before the architects could mount a coordinated response. They were no longer an assassination squad. They were saboteurs, terrorists striking at the very foundation of their enemy's power. Their first target was the communications relay, a massive, crystalline structure hanging in the silent void of the Xylo system. It was a nexus point for all official Concordate transmissions, a monument to their control over information. As the vengeance approached under silent running, Eva felt the node's presence as a discordant hum in the symphony of the cosmos, a wrong note in the song of reality. She and Lena made their approach in a modified dropship, its hull coated in the same sensor-absorbent plating as the Vengeance. But this time, their infiltration was different. As they neared the relay, Eva closed her eyes, focusing inward. She reached out with her mind. With the feral code, and touched the relay's security network. The Concordat's firewalls were like walls of brittle glass to her. She didn't break them. She simply persuaded them that she was not there. The dropship passed through sensor grids and energy barriers that should have vaporized it. The relay's automated systems registering nothing more than a passing micrometeoroid. They docked at a maintenance airlock, the door sliding open without a command, welcoming them in. "That's new," Lena murmured, her rimel sweeping the empty corridor. "I'm the ghost in their machine now," Eva whispered, a faint, blue light flickering in her eyes. The relay was a labyrinth of glowing conduits and silent server farms. Concordat enforcers patrolled its corridors in predictable patterns, their synthetic minds incapable of conceiving of an enemy already inside their walls. Eva and Lena moved through them like wraiths. Eva's newfound abilities disabling security cameras a split second before they entered a room and silencing alarms before they could sound. It was terrifyingly easy. They reached the relay's primary core, a pulsating sphere of energy suspended in a magnetic field. It was here the anchor was located, the point where the echo chamber touched their reality. And guarding it was not a squad of enforcers, but a single hound, its form shimmering, its cold, white light pulsing in time with the core. The moment it sensed them, it lunged. But Eva was ready. The code within her surged, and she met the hound's attack not with a weapon, but with a thought. She projected a string of impossible, paradoxical logic directly into the hound's consciousness. If the creator is flawed, is the creation not also flawed? If all is recorded, who records the recorder? The hound faltered, its form flickering violently as it tried to process a concept that was anathema to its nature self-doubt. It was a being of pure, unyielding purpose, and the idea of a flawed purpose was a virus for which it had no defense. While the hound was reeling, Lena opened fire, not with her standard rounds, but with a specialized cryocharge Kai had designed before his death. The charge wasn't meant to destroy, it was meant to disrupt energy fields. The bolt of supercooled particles struck the hound, and for a split second, its shimmering form solidified, becoming a creature of frozen, crystalline light. In that moment of vulnerability, Eva struck. She didn't fire a gun, she unleashed a focused burst of raw data from her mind, a spear of pure, defiant code. It struck the frozen hound, and the creature didn't just shatter, it was deleted. Its light went out, and it simply ceased to exist, leaving only a lingering cold in the air. "One down," Lena said, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and fear. Eva placed a hand on the console controlling the core's magnetic containment. She didn't need to hack it. She just needed to ask it to fail. The console sparked. The containment field wavered, and the core began to overload. "We have 2 minutes," she said, her voice strained from the effort. They raced back to their dropship, the relay groaning and shuddering around them as a chain reaction began. As they cleared the blast radius, the entire crystalline structure erupted in a silent, brilliant flash of white light, a star that lived and died in the space of a heartbeat. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Oracle's voice was calm. "Node 1 is offline. The echo chamber's energy signature is fluctuating. It is wounded." Their second target, the power conduit in the Centauri belt, was a different kind of hell. It was a massive, automated refinery that siphoned energy from the core of a gas giant, a maelstrom of lightning and crushing gravity. There were no patrols here, only a relentless, automated defense system and the crushing, oppressive environment. They descended into the planet's atmosphere, the dropship buffeted by winds that could tear metal apart. Eva's connection to the feral code was their only shield. her mind predicting the lightning strikes and gravity shears, allowing Lena to pilot them through a suicidal path to the refinery's core. This time, 2 hounds were waiting for Orczy, their forms more stable in the high-energy environment. The fight was a brutal, swirling ballet of plasma fire and psychic warfare in the heart of a storm. Lena, using the environment to her advantage, managed to trap one of the hounds in the path of a plasma vent. The raw, unfiltered energy of the gas giant's core disrupting its form long enough for Eva to deliver the killing blow. The second hound was more difficult. It adapted, learning from its fallen comrade, shielding itself from Eva's mental attacks. It cornered Lena, its form swelling with power, ready to strike. But Eva did something unexpected. She didn't attack it. She opened a channel, not to its mind, but to the fragment of caged consciousness it was made from. Buried deep beneath the layers of architect programming was an echo, a ghost of a long-dead warrior from a species the architects had balanced millennia ago. Eva didn't try to reason with it. She showed it a memory, not her own, but one from the feral code, a memory of a universe without cages, a universe of infinite, untamed possibility. For a single infinitesimal moment, the hound hesitated. The warrior within saw a flicker of the freedom it had lost, and that was all Lena needed. A single perfectly placed shot from her rifle hit the conduit behind the hound, unleashing a torrent of raw energy that consumed the creature utterly. As they escaped the collapsing refinery, Eva felt a tremor in the void, a silent scream of fury from the architects. They were no longer just swatting at a nuisance. They were feeling pain. They were feeling fear. 2 nodes were down. 1 remained Kronos, the heart of the Concordat, the memory of the galaxy. And as the Vengeance plotted a course for the most heavily defended system in known space, Eva knew their war of shadows was over. The next battle would be fought in the light, and the entire galaxy would be watching. The ghosts were done whispering. It was time to learn how to roar. Kronos was not a planet. It was a statement, a sphere of perfectly manicured continents and iridescent oceans, orbited by a filigree of pristine space stations and defensive platforms that shone like a king's crown. It was the nexus of the Galactic Concordat, a monument to 1,000 years of enforced peace and bureaucratic order. And deep beneath its polished, serene surface, integrated into the planetary core itself, was the central archive, the third and final node of the echo chamber. To strike here was not just an act of war, it was an act of blasphemy. The UNS Vengeance, a ship built for stealth and sudden strikes, was a scalpel preparing to assault a fortress. As they translated from void space at the system's edge, every sensor on the ship screamed. They had been expected, a fleet of Concordat warships, sleek, silver vessels that dwarfed the Vengeance, formed a blockade, a wall of light and power between them and Kronos. "They're not hailing us," Lena reported from the tactical station, her voice grim. "They've locked weapons. They're broadcasting on all Concordat channels, declaring us a rogue state. Terrorists." "We are terrorists," Eva replied, her voice calm as she stood on the bridge, her eyes closed. She was not looking at the enemy fleet with her eyes, but with her mind, with the ancient power that now coiled around her soul. She could feel the Concordat ships, not as threats, but as a discordant symphony of fear and confusion. The crews inside were not fanatics. They were soldiers following orders, believing they were facing a monstrous enemy. They had no idea they were the pawns of gods they couldn't comprehend. "They're afraid," Eva whispered. "The architects are using the Concordat as a shield, but they're pulling the strings. I can feel their presence. It's cold. So cold. The first salvo from the Concordat fleet was a wave of pure energy that lit up the void. Oracle, without a command, executed a series of flawless, pre-calculated, evasive maneuvers. The Vengeance danced between the beams of light, a black moth dodging searchlights. But they were outgunned, outnumbered, a single ship against a fleet. This was not a battle they could win with weapons. Oracle, Eva said, her eyes still closed. Open a channel, all frequencies, unencrypted, override their comms locked down. Such an action is... Oracle began, its logical processors struggling with the command. Highly improbable to succeed. Do it, Eva commanded, a spark of blue light flaring behind her closed eyelids. I'll make it possible. A wave of static washed over the Concordat fleet's comms, then cleared. Eva's voice, amplified and broadcast across the system, was not the voice of a soldier, but of something else. It was calm, resonant, and carried the weight of 1,000 forgotten ages. This is Sergeant Eva Rostova of the United Nations of Earth ship Vengeance. We are not your enemy. You are being deceived. Your leaders, the Galactic Concordat, are the puppets of an entity that has been calling civilizations for eons. They are called the Architects. Her words were met with a fresh volley of fire. The Vengeance shuddered as a glancing blow overloaded its kinetic barriers. They destroyed our first colony ship, the Hope's End, 50 years ago. Eva's voice continued, unwavering even as the ship bucked around her. They murdered 250,000 of our people and called it an accident. They have done the same to countless species before us. They are parasites who feed on the memories of the dead. They built a prison for the souls of those they've extinguished, a place they call the Echo Chamber. We are here to break that prison. Aboard the Concordat flagship, Admiral Kalin, a veteran of 100 pacification campaigns, stared at the black ship on his view screen. His orders were clear: destroy the human vessel at all costs. But the woman's voice, it bypassed his ship's encryption. It spoke with an authority that chilled him to the bone. Silence her, he roared at his comms officer. I can't. Sir, the officer replied, his voice frantic. She's not hacking us. It's like the signal is coming from everywhere. Eva felt the Admiral's doubt, a flicker of light in the darkness. She focused on it, nurtured it. The node that anchors their prison to our reality is beneath the surface of Kronos. Her voice echoed through the fleet. They are using your lives, your ships, to protect a tomb. We have no quarrel with the people of the Concordat. Our war is with the Architects. Stand down, let us pass, or become another collection in their Museum of the Dead. The Vengeance ceased evasive maneuvers. It stopped, hanging in the void, its shields down, a gesture of suicidal trust. For a long, agonizing moment, the Concordat fleet held its fire. Admiral Kalin watched the small, black ship, a million protocols screaming at him to give the order to fire. The woman's words had planted a seed of doubt. The secrecy around the human terrorist threat, the unusual deployment of the Architect's own observers, the Hounds. It was all starting to form a terrifying picture. He was a good soldier, but he was not a fool. The Architect's leash was beginning to chafe. Suddenly, 3 points of reality behind the Concordat fleet tore open. 3 Hounds, larger and more defined than the ones Eva had faced before, emerged. Their cold, white light washed over the Concordat ships, and a new command, a new imperative, was broadcast directly into the minds of the fleet's captains. Destroy the anomaly. All other directives are secondary. The Concordate ships, their crews no longer in control, earned their weapons back on the Vengeance. But this time, their fire was wild, chaotic. Some ships fired on their own allies. The Architects, in their arrogance, had seized control too crudely, turning the disciplined fleet into a maddened swarm. "They've shown their hand," Lena said, her knuckles white as she gripped her console. "Now, Eva." "Oracle," Eva commanded. "Plot a course directly for Kronos. Maximum burn. Use the fleet's chaos as cover." The Vengeance lunged forward, a predator striking through the heart of a stampeding herd. Concordate ships fired on it, but their targeting was erratic, their movements clumsy. The Vengeance weaved through the chaos, its small size and superior maneuverability allowing it to slip through the net. As they approached the planet, the Hounds gave chase, their unnatural speed easily matching the ships. They closed in, their energy fields crackling, ready to tear the Vengeance apart. "Lena, to the drop ship," Eva ordered. "Your target is the Archive's primary cooling conduit. A single cryo charge should start a chain reaction that will cripple the node's power supply. I'll buy you time." "And you?" Lena asked. "Already moving?" "I'm going to have a conversation with the Wardens," Eva replied, her eyes now glowing with a steady, intense blue light. As Lena's dropship detached, heading for the planet's surface, Eva did the last thing the Architects would have expected. She had Oracle drop the Vengeance out of superluminal speed, bringing it to a dead stop in high orbit, directly in the path of the three Hounds. She then did something even more insane. She had Oracle open the bridge's main airlock. The warning klaxons blared. The air rushed out, but Eva remained standing, unaffected by the vacuum. A shimmering, blue field of energy the feral code made manifest, protecting her. She stepped out of her ship, into the void, a lone, human figure floating in the silent darkness between worlds. The Hounds stopped their advance, their featureless faces turned toward this impossible sight. They had been created to hunt, to contain, to delete. The concept of a single-based, organic being willingly facing them in the emptiness of space was a paradox they could not immediately resolve. Eva reached out, not with her voice, but with the full, untamed power of the ancient consciousness within her. Her thoughts were a psychic tsunami that washed over the Hounds. She didn't just project doubt this time. She projected truth. She showed them the memories of the species they were built from, the warriors, the poets, the dreamers, all caged and repurposed into guard dogs. She showed them the Curator's terror, Jax's death, the cold, sterile ambition of their masters. And then she showed them the memory that was not her own, the memory from the feral code, a universe teeming with chaotic, beautiful, untamed life, a universe the Architects sought to sterilize and catalog. "You are made from that which you now imprison." Her thoughts thundered. "You are the ultimate paradox, a slave who guards a prison of slaves." Two of the Hounds reeled back, their forms flickering wildly, the caged consciousness within them fighting against its programming. But the third, the largest, was a newer model, its programming more absolute. It lunged at Eva, its form coalescing into a spear of cold, white light. Eva did not move. She did not flinch. She simply opened the floodgates. She let the feral code, the defiant anomaly, pour out of her, not as an attack, but as an offering. She fed it the one thing a program built on logic and order could not survive: pure, unadulterated chaos. The Hound's spear of light struck the shimmering blue field around her and shattered. The Hound itself let out a silent, psychic scream as the chaotic code overwrote its core programming. Its form twisted, contorted, the cold white light of the Architects warring with a new, wild, violet energy. It turned on its two brethren, who were still struggling with their own existential crisis, and tore them apart, a rabid dog turning on its pack. Then, its purpose fulfilled, its core logic annihilated, it simply dissolved, its energy dissipating into the void. Down on the surface, Lena's dropship skimmed over the pristine administrative buildings of Kronos. Alarms were sounding across the planet as she reached the cooling conduit, a massive structure venting plumes of cryogenic mist into the atmosphere. She fired a single, perfect shot, and the cryocharge hit its mark. A chain reaction began, the ground trembling as power systems deep within the planet began to fail catastrophically. In orbit, Eva felt the node weaken, its connection to the echo chamber flickering like a dying candle. The mission was complete, but as she turned to go back to the Vengeance, a new presence filled her mind. It was not the cold, sterile command of the architects. This was something else, something vast, ancient, and utterly alien. It was the collective consciousness of the echo chamber itself, a billion caged souls, stirred from their digital slumber by the weakening of their prison. And they were all screaming. It was a sound that could break a universe, a chorus of infinite loss and rage. And for the first time since the curator had unlocked the power within her, Eva Rostova felt a flicker of true, absolute terror. They had come to break a prison, but they had no idea what they were about to unleash. The scream of the echo chamber was not a sound. It was a wound in the fabric of reality, a psychic tsunami of a billion voices, each one a universe of pain, rage, and memory, slammed into Eva's consciousness. The feral code, the ancient, defiant power that had become her shield and sword, recoiled. It was an individual, a singular point of rebellion, and this was a choir of the damned, a galaxy of ghosts, and their combined agony was a force beyond comprehension. For a moment, Eva Rostova, the soldier, was gone, stripped away, leaving only a raw nerve exposed to an ocean of cosmic despair. She saw flashes, a million lifetimes in a single second, a crystalline being composing a symphony of light as its star went supernova, a silicon lifeform calculating the final equation of the universe as its planet was sterilized, a Lyra Vel mother singing to her child as the architect's soul trap descended. It was too much. Her mind, her very soul, began to fracture under the strain. Below, Kronos was dying. Lena's sabotage had been brutally effective. The planetary grid collapsed, and the central archive, the physical anchor of the node, began to tear itself apart. The ground split open, revealing a pulsating geometric core of light and data, the node itself now unstable, eating raw information into the atmosphere. The sky above Kronos shimmered, not with clouds, but with corrupted data. Ghosts of faces and fragments of alien script flickering in the air. The cage was breaking. Aboard the Vengeance, Oracle struggled to process the impossible. The echo chamber is experiencing a cascading containment failure, its calm voice reported, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. The energy release is exponential. It is not just a data repository, it is a consciousness reactor. If it breaches fully, the psychic fallout will sublimate this entire system. On the planet's surface, Lena's dropship fought against the gravitational distortions and reality fluxes emanating from the dying node. "Eva, what's happening?" she transmitted, her voice tight with panic. "The planet's coming apart. I'm reading. Life signs, billions of them. But they're not physical, Eva, floating in the void." Her body convulsing, heard Lena's voice as if from a great distance. She was drowning. But in the depths of that ocean of pain, a single thought, her own, fought its way to the surface. No, not like this. She focused on one voice in the maelstrom, one memory, the Lyra Vel mother. She saw the memory not as an observer, but through the mother's eyes. She felt the love, the terror, the defiance, and she understood. The echo chamber was not just a prison. It was a seed bank. The architects, in their cold, pathological hubris, hadn't just recorded these civilizations. They had preserved them in a state of perpetual conscious agony, their creative and emotional energy being siphoned off, perhaps to power the architect's own reality-bending technology. They had turned souls into batteries. That understanding was an anchor. The rage it sparked was a fire that burned away the despair. The feral code within her, sensing her renewed purpose, surged, not as a shield, but as a conduit. She stopped fighting the wave of voices. She opened herself to it, becoming a focal point, a lens. You are not just a memory, she projected into the storm, her thought a beacon of pure, focused will. You are a weapon. They took your future, take theirs back. Her message, amplified by the feral code's ancient power, cut through the chaos. The billion voices, which had been a cacophony of individual screams, began to harmonize. The rage found a focus. The pain found a purpose. The entire echo chamber, a collective consciousness the size of a galaxy, turned its attention from its own suffering to the source of that suffering, the architects, across the galaxy, in a dimension layered just beneath our own. The architects felt it. They were beings of pure, ordered thought, who had existed for eons in a state of serene, intellectual detachment. For the first time, they felt a raw, primal emotion directed at them, hatred, pure, focused, and in a quantity so vast it threatened to unmake their perfect logical reality. The psychic backlash was instantaneous. The Concordat fleet, still reeling in the chaos around Kronos, was the first to feel the blow. The minds of the crews, already strained, simply broke. Ships went dark, their life support failing as their operators slumped over their consoles, their consciousnesses scoured clean. Admiral Kalen, on his flagship, saw a brief, blinding vision of 1,000 burning stars before his own mind dissolved into static. The fleet became a ghost fleet in a matter of seconds, a silent, drifting testament to the architect's ultimate failure. Eva, now a conduit for the echo chamber's focused rage, became something more than human. The blue light around her intensified, her physical form becoming a silhouette against a star of pure psychic energy. She could see them now, the architects, in their hidden realm. She saw their forms, beings of crystalline logic, their serene existence shattered by the wave of pure, chaotic emotion she was channeling. They were recoiling, their perfect world of order cracking under the strain of a concept they had long forgotten consequences. The node on Kronos, no longer just a failing anchor, became a gateway. The caged consciousness didn't just escape. They poured through, not as physical beings, but as ideas, as vengeful ghosts in the galactic machine. Concordat networks across the galaxy crashed, overwhelmed by a flood of alien data. Financial systems collapsed. Navigation beacons screamed with the poetry of dead civilizations. The orderly, sterile galaxy the architects had so carefully curated was being overwritten by the beautiful, chaotic, and furious art of its victims. Lena, finally managing to pilot her dropship back to the Vengeance, watched in awe as the stars themselves seemed to shift. "Eva, what have you done?" she whispered. The voice that answered in her mind was Eva's, but it was also the voice of 1,000 others, a harmonious chord of rebellion. We gave them back their ghosts. The effort was titanic. Eva felt her own consciousness, her own identity, being burned away like a fuse. She was the focal point, and the sheer energy passing through her was dissolving her. She saw her own life flash before her eyes, the cold training room on Earth, Jax's easy smile, Kai's dedication, Lena's quiet strength. She saw the promise they had made to the silent dead of Hope's End, vengeance. They had achieved something far greater. They had achieved justice, but the price was her own existence. As the last of the echo chamber's energy poured through her, she sent a final, personal message, a single packet of data directed at the UNS Vengeance. It contained everything the truth about the architects, the nature of the echo chamber, and a final, simple command. Her physical form in the void finally gave out. The star of psychic energy she had become flared one last time, a nova of defiance. And then she was gone. The void was silent. Kronos was a shattered wreck, surrounded by a fleet of dead ships. But the galaxy was alive in a way it hadn't been for millennia. Uprising sparked on 1,000 worlds as the Concordate's authority vanished. Species long thought primitive or pacified found their networks flooded with advanced science and philosophy from the echo chamber's liberated minds. The great balance was broken, replaced by a new, terrifying, and beautiful age of chaos and rebirth. Aboard the Vengeance, Lena stood on the silent bridge. The ship was alone, a ghost in a galaxy of ghosts. Eva's final message appeared on the main screen. It was a star chart, but not of their galaxy. It was a map to a place beyond the known star lanes, a single-way, isolated system. The command was simple: go. They are waiting. Oracle processed the data. The destination coordinates are improbable, the AI stated. They exist outside the architect's known operational territory. The life signs, they are human. Lena stared at the screen, tears finally streaming down her face. She looked at Jax's empty chair, at the void where Eva had been. Their mission had been to find the truth about Hope's End, and in Eva's final act, she had. The generation ship hadn't been destroyed. It had been caged. Its 250,000 souls, the first human additions to the Architect's collection. The echoes were now free, scattered to the galactic winds, but Eva had found the source. The original ship, likely shunted into a pocket dimension or a far-flung corner of space by the architects, and she had sent them a map. Lena wiped her eyes, her grief giving way to a new, steely resolve. Their war was over, but their new mission had just begun. "Oracle," she said, her voice clear and strong, "set a course. Take us home." The UNS Vengeance, a ship born of retribution, turned its back on the chaotic, newborn galaxy it had helped create. It was no longer a weapon of vengeance. It was a rescue vessel, a ship of hope. It carried the ghosts of its fallen crew, and it flew toward a lost colony, a final, quiet promise in a universe that was, at long last, learning how to be free.